When you think of great Tudor...
Forsooth, Cranmer, bring thy wenches.
Not you. Women, the Virgin Queen often springs to mind. And, according to Spanish ambassadors, she was still springing with the Duke of Nevers by way of 2 galliard dances in 1602. Oh, but that's another story. Aside from being epically ginger, she is perhaps best known for heralding in a golden age of exploration and prosperity, dispatching her own 007...
The name's Walsingham, Sir Francis Walsingham.
...to spy on her cousin, taking charge of a sheikh's spear, and even sinking her brother-in-law's boats. But how did this third in the line to the throne and daughter of a traitor become one of the greatest monarchs in British history? In this episode, we shall not be focusing upon Elizabeth I's reign.
Why not?
Oh,
Thou shalt speak frankly, man.
Begging your pardon, ma'am, but rather her quirky life up until this point. It's more interesting. There's a reason we called in Mr. Peacock of the Anne Boleyn Society for help.
Hello there, my name is James Peacock and I run the Anne Boleyn Society.
So pour yourself a mead and get ready for the origin story of this old bird, back when ye oldie woman of steel was simply called the Princess Elizabeth.
Welcome to the Historiographers. Welcome to Past Quirks.
Mondays. Don't you just love them? For many, the day on which the depressing back-to-work memes get released upon the Book of Face. But we're talking about oldie-woldy times. For one lady, the day on which she gets the news that she can legally boss everyone else around for the rest of her life. That's essentially what happened when a messenger arrived at what is now the Old Palace at Hatfield in Hertfordshire on a Monday. On the 17th November 1558, the Princess Elizabeth, busily eating an apple as she read beneath an oak tree, the story goes, was informed that her sister had died. Ah, Bloody Mary. As winner of the succession competition, the 25-year-old Elizabeth was now Queen of England, adorning her sister's ring, and possibly considering getting it resized at some point. Elizabeth is believed to have quoted Psalm 118.
Ad domino factum, emeribili in oculus nostris. This is the Lord's doing, and it is marvellous in our eyes.
Just the year before, the Venetian ambassador had commented on Elizabeth's dead-ridden status, herself deprived of an allowance by Mary. Now, as Queen, Elizabeth's money problems would be over, surely. But she was inheriting a troubled land. Her sister had, at the start of the year, been rather silly and lost Calais to the French. Parliament's expenses were dwindling, surprise, surprise, and their subjects had suffered a major flu epidemic. Who doesn't like a challenge, eh? Although more independent now than Saxon Europe had been, England lacked the support of the Catholic Church, ever since one of Henry VIII's pastimes had gone slightly awry, dissolution of the monasteries. Perhaps this was one reason why, as Queen, Elizabeth actively avoided debate wherever possible. That and the fact that she had one hell of a stubborn streak. If only her ministers could have been as supportive as those fans of hers starting to line the route to Hatfield. Her insecurities, coupled with bouts of indecisiveness, certainly annoyed William Cecil.
her Secretary of State was absolutely flabbergasted with the fact that Elizabeth would read her letters that she was sent to, her documents and everything, before he had got hold of them.
William Cecil, who was of the opinion that overloading too much knowledge upon a tiny woman brain could be disastrous. And yet, this tiny woman brain was more than capable. It was multilingual and had the capacity to exhibit both practicality and wisdom. That's it. Trot along and eat your truffles, Cecil, you sexist piggy you. But then, it wasn't just the Queen's personality that was being scrutinised. In a letter to the Emperor Ferdinand, dated June 1559, German diplomat Baron Pollweiler could not fathom her logic.
For that she should wish to remain a maid and never marry is inconceivable.
Elizabeth would later go on to speak of her lustful hunky kingdom of a spouse, in which
every one of you, and as many as are English, are my children and kinsfolk.
Still, in an age of strict gender roles, these sorts of comments are hardly surprising. Lucy Hutchinson highlighted Elizabeth's
submission to her masculine and wise counsellors.
Just as Sir Thomas Smith propounded the Queen's deference to
the counsel of such able and discreet men as be able to supply all other defaults.
Clearly not wanting to be left out was the main proviso here in allowing a woman to rule a nation. There's a reason that an estimated 400 women, hand-picked from the more politically active families of Tudor society, presided at court throughout the reigns of both Mary and Elizabeth. Before a parliamentary delegation in 1563, Elizabeth stated that
I have as good a courage answerable to my place as ever my father had.
Isn't that a happy thought? A perfect example of when divine right can come in handy. For that's exactly what her predecessors had believed, that the right to rule came direct from God, first class, tracked and signed for during coronation services. Even on Mary's deathbed, Elizabeth was adamant that as her sister's successor, she could freely choose her own counsellors. As for maintaining the Catholicism of the realm, well,
I promise this much, that I will not change it, provided only that it can be proved by the word of God, which shall be the only foundation and rule of my religion.
Small print, eh? With Protestants still being burned 6 days before her accession, Elizabeth knew what she wanted for her country. Protestants Plus Extra Strength. Available at all good retailers while stocks last. Terms and conditions apply. Side effects may include occasional uprisings or deep resentment from adverse subjects. Always read the label.
Elizabeth mentions that she was much in danger in her sister's reign. Her sister was so incensed against her. This is what she gained from being the heir to the throne. So when she's then queen, she often is challenged to name a successor, to not leave the succession in jeopardy in the case of her death. But Elizabeth refuses to do this because of the situation that she faced during her sister's reign. She does not want to put herself against someone else, like having an opposition against her government or herself, or have someone else be the figurehead of rebellion. And this is very much happening when Mary Queen of Scots is trying to get Elizabeth to name her as her heir.
Having only just gotten back into Mary's good books, Liz naturally wanted to stay in them. Good books are hard to come by. Thanks to a suspicious reconciliation organised by her brother-in-law and future adversary Philip II of Spain, Liz finally got the audience with her sister that she had been so desperately seeking. Rewind to 1553 and we see Liz in London paying her respects to the Queen. For Mary was doing her best Ben-Hur impression, entering the city in a triumphal chariot as her subjects entered unwittingly into a reign of strict Catholicism. This made things somewhat difficult for her Protestant sister Liz, who would have to feign life as a Catholic simply to avoid being barbecued. Yet even this wouldn't be enough. Her position as the Queen's sister made her a Protestant figurehead, which in turn made her susceptible to being drawn into all manner of conspiracies. Was Francis Bacon Liz's illegitimate son? Was Liz herself actually a cross-dresser called Neville? Well, all right, maybe not those sorts of conspiracies. After all, we're here for a reason. We're after the facts. Rah! Enter nobleman Sir Thomas Wyatt and friends in 1554, intent on preventing Mary's marriage to Spanish Phil. With planned uprisings throughout the country, government agents ended up intercepting a number of letters from Wyatt to Edward Courtenay, Earl of Devon, and obviously to Liz. Were the uprisings just a front then, to scatter attention and resources, depose Mary and Paella Phil, and pop those two on the throne? Who knows? What we do know is that the Archbishop of Banterbury, Stephen Gardiner, had a free chops promotion on, especially for Ed and Liz, for
while they are alive, there will always be plots to raise them to the throne.
Unsurprisingly, this discovery landed Liz under house arrest at Woodstock Palace for the next year, but not before she'd served her time in the Tower. With the best fast pass available, Liz went on the Tower Splash boat ride of the 18th of March 1554. Managing to write to Mary while on board, Liz denied everything and declared her allegiance as a loyal Catholic. There were likely issues with Messenger at the time, as Mary didn't grant her an audience as requested. Instead, Liz was left to wallow upon the damp stone floor, likely crying a fair bit, as she addressed a small group of servants.
I pray you all, good friends and fellows, bear me witness that I come in no traitor, but as true a woman to the Queen's Majesty as any now living.
Ignore that poxy romantic ideal of isolation espoused by the Victorians of Liz looking into the sunset, sighing dramatically in the bell tower. It is more likely that Liz resided in the same lodgings as her mother had. Upon a visit to Richmond Place in April 1554, Liz was said to have exhibited great nervousness, believing this to be her place of execution. But as it turned out, she would escape this fate. I mean, come on, she's Elizabeth the frigging First, the heroine of this story. Whilst on the scaffold, Wyatt mirrored her words that she knew nothing of the plot or rebellion that had placed her in the Tower.
O Lord, I never thought to come here as a prisoner.
With TripAdvisor reviews like that, it's no surprise that they kicked her out after just 2 months. Oh, and lack of evidence, we mustn't forget that. On the 19th of May, the same day that her mother had lost her life there 18 years before, Liz was released from the Tower and sent into the custody of Sir Henry Bedingfield at Woodstock. Believe it or not, before prison, there had been happier times for Liz. Let's go back beyond Mary's 5-year reign and teen usurper Janie G's 9-day one. Formerly, Liz had been living in the manner to which a princess was accustomed, spontaneously bursting into song among a group of cutesy animal companions. In Lizzie's case, she was also in receipt of a yearly allowance of £3,000 owed from her father's will and given to her through her brother Edward. Following Henry's death in 1547, Liz was thought to have consoled her 9-year-old brother Ed by way of correspondence, to which he replied thus:
I perceive you think of our father's death with a calm mind.
Talk about wearing your heart on your sleeve. But then Liz wasn't said to be uncaring. She'd never really known her father well, having spent more time with her own household servants and governess. Ed's reign, however, would appear somewhat more conservative in nature to some, as one observer revealed how
The stranger that entereth into the court of England shall rather imagine himself to come into some public school of the universities than into a prince's palace.
being greeted at court as the king's favourite sister in January 1551, It's easy to see how Liz's relationship with her brother contrasted with that of her sister. Not only were they both Protestant, but Ed and Liz had been close since childhood, both sharing the same tutor in the form of John Check, brother to Nick Cash and Mike Credit Card. Referring to Liz as his
sweet sister Temperance,
it was evident that Ed was a hardcore fan of the band Rasputina. In her opinion, though, Liz would reference
The face I may well blush to offer, but for the mind I shall never be ashamed to present.
For as we all know, a face can mask a lot. Liz was prone to attacks of hysteria and depression, prompting a rather blunt theological remark. You know the one.
There is only one faith and one Jesus Christ. The rest is a dispute about trifles.
I like trifle.
There were times where she could be incredibly difficult and incredibly bad-tempered and reduce her counsellors and ladies-in-waiting to tears. There's reports of her allegedly breaking one of the fingers of her ladies-in-waiting.
Liz's frustration may also have stemmed from the belief that she may have suffered from nephritis, a kidney inflammation that swells the body. It's thought that several bouts of illness as a youth had, for her, coincided with times of extreme stress. Ironically, in a letter to Ed in July 1549, Liz recalled how the
pain in my head precluded all modes of writing,
possessing the capability to incapacitate her for weeks. Sensing bull poo, perhaps, Mary sent her commissioners to check on Liz after she had refused to meet with the Queen. As it happened, they found her abed, looking swollen and sick, her body being replenished with
many cold and waterish humours,
courtesy of Dr. Owen. Forever lifting the spirits of those around him, French Ambassador de Noailles recalled how
those who have seen her do not promise her long to live.
Well, thanks for that, monsieur. You surely know how to cheer people up, don't you? William Camden, however, took the view that Liz was usually in very good health as she abstained from wine, consumed very little meat, and exercised regularly. Like her dad had been for most of his life, Liz too was very physically active. Not only did she perform musical recitals to ambassadors, sing and play the lute, no Stairway to Heaven, please, Liz. She was a keen dancer. One such type, called a galliard, featured participants leaping and clapping their feet in midair. Liz would supposedly do 6 of these dances for her pre-breakfast workout. The Spanish ambassador later remarked upon another physically exerting activity where
the Queen went so hard that she tired everybody out.
Well, she did like a good gallop, did Liz. Demanding the fastest and best steeds, Liz's love of horse riding seemed to stem back at least to 1540-41, at a time when she allegedly made
friends before she was 8 years old
with the young Robert Dudley. 4 years after this meeting, Stallion Rob became one of the
young lords attendant upon the prince
when he joined Ed's household. It is possible, though, that he also occupied the thoughts of the young princess. Liz's decision to later swap her London residence of Durham Place for the new build of Somerset Place and to change her relationship status from "ye art single" to "'tis complicated" may suggest that she quite liked this Lord Dudley, for he had recently been made keeper of this property and, under Queen Liz, would go on to become Master of the Horse, a fitting title given their supposed first introduction. Still, this wasn't the first person she'd had an alleged attachment to.
In part 2 of The Virgin Princess, we'll discover the identity of Liz's rescuer when, as legend has it, she was thrown from her horse into a raging river. And we'll learn exactly what happens when you split an episode in We would like to thank our historical consultant for this episode, James Peacock of the Anne Boleyn Society. If you want to find out more information, then please see their Facebook page of the same name. Special thanks also to Early Music MIDI's Elizabethan Instrumental Music 1580 to 1600 and Elizabethan Instrumental Music Thomas Morley's Canzonets 1585 to 1600, and to the Somerset Group fan pages Music in the Time of Shakespeare by Dirk Framuth. Furthermore, a message of thanks to our narrators and contributors, Graham Collier, Colin Bailey, Elle MacPherson, Michael Farley and Lisa Hudson. This episode of Past Quirks has been brought to you by the Historiographers. If you'd like to find out more, then please join our Facebook group entitled The Historiographers of Facebook. This series has been made through collaborating with some amazing people. Any donations are greatly appreciated. However, if you are unable to donate, then please do share us on social media so that we can continue to share our love of the past with others. Thank you very much.